7 levels of piloting skill, from complete novice to absolute professional and master of mechanics. Now when it comes to mastering flight games, the skill ceiling often feels like a towering monolith with little to no climbing points. However, through training, anything can be achieved, and I thought today we could explore these 7 levels of piloting using Elite Dangerous as an example. But the more I looked into this topic, the more all of this could be applied to literally any flight game. So let's jump into it. Oh, and of course this video is brought to you by the fine folks at TheYamiks, who are celebrating the 24th anniversary this year. And their tech will be very useful very soon. Also stay tuned for more information on sweepstakes and other info. So one day while I was perusing some of my hobbies on YouTube, I stumbled across the Outdoors' take on 7 levels of knife sharpening. And I thought, well damn, this could actually be a fun idea for our little corner of gaming too. So a shout out to Outdoors, I'll link their work down below, and let's get into the 7 levels of piloting. Alright then, so we start at the 0 Braindead level of piloting skill. This is where not even beginners of flight games or space games live. The way you fly at this stage is like a literal Roomba.
How likely would you be to adopt this into your household?
You execute only one action at a time, either rotational or positional movement, then full slam on the brakes and execute the next one. This is a literal bot behavior that not even the most vegetable of 4chan users would do. Level 1, the first timer. Now we're at the basic bottom level, a level that literally any game with flight mechanics will present. You never used a vehicle with a flight capability before, even if it is a mobility scooter off a cliff. This level of skill is enough for you to get from point A to point B, and maybe shoot some weapon, and maybe even hit somewhere close to where you want to hit. We all start here, be you a beginner of Elite Dangerous, sitting in that Sidewinder, flying a cheapo Cessna in a flight sim, or even a jet fighter flyby in Battlefield 6. These 3 controls usually are the main starting line for all of us, and all you ever need to get from point A to point B, and arrive there in a relatively right orientation. Most often players of this level have to hit the emergency brakes from time to time before executing another turn or land anywhere, but that's alright. Then moving up a level, you have a proper maneuverability freedom, the 6 degrees of freedom, as it were. A player of this level will be familiar of not just going forward and doing basic rotation, but also somewhat comfortable with using yaw, pitch, and roll at the same time. This is where players divide into either roll pitch pilots or yaw pitch pilots, while using the third rotational axis infrequently. Be you a peasant controller, keyboard and mouse master race user, or even a pleasure joystick waggler, most of us end up using roll pitch axis as the main rotational axis, while supplementing additional movement if needed, in occasion with yaw. For joysticks, this especially is common since twisting the stick at the same time while pitching and rolling is tiresome and kinda uncomfortable. While on keyboard and mouse or controller, you have to use additional buttons to enable your rotation in the first place. Still, whichever control scheme you use, you are comfortable in flying. You know how to angle and rotate a ship or airplane, but seldom use every axis at the same time, and that is just fine. As you level up, you start to explore the limits of mechanics afforded to you. Ever since the early space sims in the late 90s, or hell even older, there's been a gimmick mechanic present in nearly all flight games, of top speed versus rotation. Basically, the faster you go, the slower you can turn. Hell, this mechanic is very similar to car games as well. In Elite, as well as many other flight games, there's the so-called sweet spot for speed at which you are able to turn at the maximum rate, usually 50 to 70% of the top speed, the so-called blue zone. Additionally, many space games also introduce boost or afterburners that increase the top speed and acceleration for a brief period. For example, in Elite Dangerous, it's a one-flip switch, and during the boost activation, also it maximizes rotational speeds. On the other hand, for example, in Star Citizen, the afterburners are like nitros in Need for Speed Underground games. Now, players on this level are aware of these mechanics and actively ensure that they slow down for a tighter turn while using boost to close in the gaps. For most experienced players, you can think of this as the bell curve's peak. Your typical space dad rarely goes beyond it, since most NPCs in most games tend to not challenge them to go beyond this either. Level 4, Tracking. Now, after getting used to flight mechanics, the next easiest leveling up you can do is not only performing all the maneuvers and rotations simultaneously, but also being able to track your opponent through the maneuver as well. Kinda like riding a bike and shifting gears while braking without looking, or touch typing your next Excel spreadsheet. This is where additional tech and hardware has to come in. At the most expensive end, you have full VR gear, but if that's too much, at a little lower cost you got eye tracking tech. Basically, either case enables you to decouple your character's head from the forward-facing view. Now, since this video is sponsored by Tobii, I'll use their wonderful products as an example, but make no mistake, even if there are cheaper solutions, I'm yet to find head and eye tracking solution that performs better than what the latest Tobii 5 tech can do. Well, with the exception of VR, which is a lot more expensive. Since I've already worked with Tobii before multiple times, I won't just repeat the same marketing talking points and let the footage speak for itself. Instead, I'll simply mention that if you use my link in the description for the 24th anniversary, you can grab their cool stuff on a good discount. The offer stands from 18th August to 11th September. Oh, and there's also a sweepstake for some cool prizes to celebrate the anniversary, so use the link down below to support the companies that support my work. Either case, be you using Tobii Eye Tracker, full privilege goggle setup, or some jank-ass jerry-rigged solution, as long as you're able to use head or eye tracking to keep your opponent in sight for longer, the better you'll become, and that's simply thanks to your situational awareness. Honestly, it's kinda scary just how naturally disadvantage creeps up on making you just that little bit better at flying your chosen space garbage truck. Now then, as we move on to level 5 and onwards, it will feature spaceship exclusive abilities and skills. While certain planes might have something that could be considered as a retro thruster of sorts in Elite Dangerous as well as many other space sims, the use of lateral thrusters are highly important to reach this extra edge level. Just on their own, lateral thrusters can be separated in about 2 to 3 different sub-levels already. Sub-level 1, the use of lateral thrusters with or against rotational maneuver to extend or shorten the turn. Sub-level 2, additional speed and precision flying. While Elite Dangerous does not feature individual thruster mechanics as such, unlike Star Citizen, in the theory of realism, using forward engines plus lateral thrusters would net gain you a little bit of extra speed. And Sub-level 3, the use of lateral thrusters for constant vector changes to avoid enemy weapon targeting. The use of lateral thrusters not only is very useful for landings and precision flight here and there, but also offer a lot more maneuverability to already complex set of mechanics. Players who learn to use the lateral thrusters in tandem with all the previous mechanics truly separate from the rest, be it in Elite Dangerous, Star Citizen, or hell, even some of the old games. Also, this is a stage where players start to use and master eventually the power management of a ship. In case of Elite Dangerous, there's the PIP system, changing priorities between weapons, engines, and systems. Mastering this is also very crucial. Players using all of these mechanics are a cut above the rest, but that's just the start. Level 6, the Pro level. The upper echelon of spaceship pilots truly separate great from merely good pilots with one simple mechanic, turning off assists. Players able to control their ships without the use of aids like flight assist in Elite Dangerous, coupled mode in Star Citizen, or engine kill in something like Freelancer are what makes an exceptional pilot. Pretty much all self-respecting space games with passion for basic combat mechanics will have this sort of a mode where you can basically do this.
Okay, I promise you. At least one of us will.
However, this mode, this Newtonian-style flight also requires a complete remapping of controls. The previous roll pitch scheme that is so much easier to fly with assists on goes out the window to make the way for superior yaw pitch scheme. And the reason for that is simple. Just like in FPS games, you aim with your mouse, not with half of it. Same goes with space games. However, with keyboard and mouse as well as joysticks, and especially in flight sim games, feels counterintuitive to swap to this style of flight. Additionally, for mouse and keyboard, the so-called relative mode, where rotational axes are recentering themselves after a while, is a must feature to have, which again further complicates the normal everyday leisurely flights. Now, safe to say that this is almost exclusive to combat flight, but the main benefits of flying without these assists is that you get to maintain the constant motion, and that is keeping your maneuverability and survivability at maximum during a fight. Because in most games, this assisted flight mode could be easily toggled, many pilots simply start by briefly toggling assists off, while most of the time using the assist on mode for such things as aiming or stabilizing flight. But players truly reaching for the apex of piloting all have learned to never engage assisted modes, due to just how much speed they break. Players who have mastered this level are truly rare, and I dare to say the top 1%. And even with that said, there is still a level above. And so we finally come to the ace level that stands above everyone. A pilot who dares to reach this level will have learned all the 6 degrees of freedom, use lateral thrusters and boost at its peak to reach the maximum velocity and maneuverability at all times, while relying on absolutely no assist systems. And most importantly, do it in perfect timing. If you pit 2 pilots with equal ships, the one that wins the engagement will be the one who manages to use their boost after their opponent has popped their double granny clutching, gaining that few extra milliseconds of peak performance over their opponent. Even in such flight models as Star Citizen, afterburner conservation and turning times often dictate which one of the pilots will have the upper hand, and knowing just when to hold back and when to pop the space clutch is the truest mark of a space ace pilot. So then, what do you think? Did I get the 7 levels of piloting correct, or am I off base completely? I got to admit, I have only dabbled in level 6 myself and mostly can do level 5 at best. Though I don't use level 4 at all because I'm filming everything and I don't want to spoil the footage. Still, it's a far cry for me to consider myself anything but mediocre. Just that I have simply been ganked by plenty of mediocre gankers and some exceptional pilots. So at least I can recognize the skill. Either which case, big thanks to Toby for sponsoring the video. Remember to check out their links down below and celebrate their 24th anniversary. Congratulations. That'll be about it for me. I'll see you in the black, practicing that vomit comet with assists off.